So just like we were analyzing the physiology, that word physiology once again means function, how the parts of the body function. Just like we analyzed the physiology of hearing when we were studying sound waves, I want to talk about the physiology of vision. How do eyes work? How do eyes receive, interact with, pick up light information? Remember, we viewed sound as a type of information. It was carrying encoded information. The information was encoded in, so to speak, the parts of the wave, the wavelength of the wave, the frequency of the wave, the amplitude of the wave. All that information got transmitted to the ear, and the hair cells in the cochlea of the ear transduce that information into electrical information, right? Well, the same exact thing is going to happen with light. Light is going to come in and get received by a part of the body. I hope you know it's the eye. I hope I'm not spoiling anything when I tell you it's the eye. The eye receives light information. Light information is received by the eye, and just like with sound waves, the light waves have to get transduced into an electrical signal. Why? Because your brain works in the language, so to speak, of electricity. Your brain is composed of nerve cells. Nerve cells transmit electrical signals. So the light energy has to get transduced, and then that electrical signal that gets created in the transduction has to get sent to your brain, a part called the occipital lobe. If you put your hand on the back of your head, kind of in line with your ears, right above where your neck ends and your head begins, back there is the occipital lobe of your brain. So the nerve cells from your eye actually run underneath your brain and stick into that back part of your brain called the occipital lobe. So it's actually possible for someone to lose their vision just by hitting the back of their head really hard and damaging that lobe of the brain, even though their eyes can function perfectly well. If that part of the brain that actually processes the information, if that's not functioning, then they can't see. So that's kind of interesting. So notice there are the same three steps that we had last time. Sensation, that's the process of receiving the information. Transduction, that's the process of turning the information into an electrical signal. And then perception, that's the process of unpacking, interpreting, processing the electrical information. So the structures of the eye sense the light. Special cells in the retina of your eye transduce the light into electrical signals. The electrical signals get passed along the optic nerve to the occipital lobe of the brain, and the occipital lobe of the brain is responsible for perception. So sensation, transduction, perception once again. Just like we had a diagram of the ear, let's study a diagram of the eye. This is as if you had an eye and you kind of sliced it vertically and you're looking in. So we're looking into the side of the eye. Here's the front of the eye, obviously. Here's the back of the eye. You can see there's the optic nerve. So as light travels into the eye, the first structure it's going to encounter is going to be the cornea. The cornea is like a protector, basically. It helps to protect the eye. And then it's going to travel through this little fluid-filled, very, very tiny fluid-filled little cavity. And light is going to pass into this opening, which is known as the pupil. The pupil is surrounded by a ring of muscle called the iris. That's the colored part of your eye. It's a type of muscle. It's capable of closing up and opening up to affect how much light gets into the pupil. So in very low light situations, the iris will be opened very wide to let more light in. In very bright light situations, the iris will contract to let less light in to protect your eye. And then right behind the pupil is a lens. The lens is a piece of hard, clear protein. And just like any other lens, what it does is it actually bends, it refracts the light waves so that they can focus on the back of the eye. The back of the eye, the retina, that is where the information gets transduced. That is where the light waves must go. So the lens is responsible for focusing, for bending, for refracting the light waves onto the back of the eye, the retina. So the light passes through the cornea, goes through the pupillary opening, travels through the lens, which focuses and bends it, and then back here to the retina. The lens is attached to these muscles, ciliary muscles, which are actually capable of changing the lens's shape to help you focus on things that are near or far. The lens is going to have to bend light differently to focus it on the retina, depending on if what you're looking at is near, far, or in between. So if you hold your hand up right in front of your face and you focus on your hand, and then you shift your eyes to focus on the wall behind you, on the wall behind your hand, the far away wall. So focus on something near, and focus on something far. What's happening is that the lens is actually changing shape to change which light waves are getting bent just correctly to focus in on the retina. Here's another picture that kind of shows you what I'm talking about. So here is an object. The light comes in, passes through the cornea, passes through the opening of the pupil, passes through the lens. The lens bends, refracts the light to focus it on the retina back here. And you can see the lens is attached to these muscles, which are capable of distorting it, of changing its shape so it can focus those light waves differently. You'll notice something kind of wacky that you've probably actually heard before, but the image that ends up getting projected on the retina back here is inverted. It's flipped. The way the lens bends and refracts the light waves actually causes the waves from the top of the image to get bent and put toward the bottom, and the waves from the bottom of the object get refracted and put at the top. So your retina actually receives an inverted image. Why don't we see things inverted then if that's what the retina receives? Well, because your brain is responsible for processing it and kind of flipping it back over. So this is the process of sensation. The light waves travel through the cornea, which is protective, through the opening of the pupil, which is surrounded by the iris. The light waves get refracted by the lens so they can be focused just right in the retina. The retina contains cells which are responsible for transducing. Remember, transduction is the process by which one form of energy or information is converted to another form of energy or information. And those cells contained within the retina are called rod cells and cone cells. So here is a zoomed in image of the retina. Light comes in, it gets focused by the lens so that it can hit the retina just right. And that light ends up exciting these special cells, which are in your retina, called rod and cone cells. The cone cells are shaped like a cone. The rod cells are shaped like a rod, no surprise there. Those cells, through a very complicated process, are capable of taking that electromagnetic wave, the light wave, and transducing it into electrical pulses, electrical signals, which travel through these nerve cells, which all wrap up into the optic nerve, which travels to the occipital lobe of your brain. So that's what's happening here. So let me talk to you a little bit about these cone and rod cells. The cone and rod cells have different jobs. Rod cells are really responsible for detecting, for picking up, for interacting with the intensity of light, how bright the light is. Cone cells are the cells responsible for perceiving color. Now remember where color came from. Color came from the type of light in the electromagnetic spectrum, yeah? So these are the colors of the visible spectrum. They have different wavelengths, different frequencies. So depending on the frequency and the wavelength of the light that's been received, the cone cells are going to get activated differently. And you actually have 3 different types of cone cells in your eye: green, red, and blue. Guess what colors of light they're responsible for interacting with? Yeah, green, red, and blue light. Now, they don't just interact with one type of green, one type of red, one type of blue. Actually, each cone cell is responsible for a spectrum of wavelengths. So on this chart, we have wavelengths of light. Remember, visible light is about 400 to about 700-ish nanometers. The blue cone cells are responsible for absorbing, for interacting with this spectrum of light. Remember, blue light has a shorter wavelength, therefore higher frequency and higher energy. So the blue cones pick up this part. The green cones pick up middle wavelength light, and the red cones pick up long wavelength light. And they overlap, and they get stimulated differently at different wavelengths, and that complicated process gives us all these colors that we see, all the way from bluish purple to red and everything in between. Now, there are some parts where we have lower light, like that we have lower capacity. For example, here in the blue-green region, we don't. We kind of have a little gap right there. We can still see some, but not a lot gets absorbed. So we have these little gaps, but basically we see everything from blue to red. And it's due to the three types of cone cells that we have: blue, green, and red. Now I know what you're thinking. These are not the primary colors that you learn about in art class when you're mixing pigments. And that's because when you mix pigments, like mixed colors of paint, that's a different type of combination of color. And mixing pure color of pure light it works a little bit differently. I'm not going to get into that, it's kind of complicated, but know that when we're talking about just light, there are different types of primary colors: blue, green, and red. What are they for paint, for art class? Is it blue, red, and yellow? I don't even remember, probably. But for pure light, it's blue, green, and red. Those are our primary colors. So the cone and rod cells transduce the information. So we have sensation, transduction, and then of course the electrical signal gets sent to your occipital lobe of your brain where it gets perceived. So if someone's colorblind, they have some genetic malfunction that's causing their cone cells to not function properly. That's one sort of visual defect that people can have. Here are other types of visual defects: hyperopia and myopia. Hyperopia and myopia. Hyperopia is another word for farsightedness. You're really good at seeing things far away. You're kind of crappy when it comes to looking at things nearby. Myopia, you're good at seeing things near. You're nearsighted, but you have a difficult time viewing things that are far away. Hyperopia and myopia are caused when the eye is not the right size and shape. Remember what the lens does. It has to take those light rays and focus them on the retina. Well, think about this. If your eye is too short, then the best place where your lens is focusing those light waves is actually behind your retina. So you're going to receive a blurry image. Same thing with myopia. The eye is too long. So the image is going to get focused here in front of the retina. So by the time it reaches the retina, the image is going to be blurry. So normal vision, the eye is shaped just correctly so that the lens focuses exactly on the retina. Hyperopia, farsightedness, the image gets focused behind the retina. What the retina receives is therefore blurry. Myopia, the image gets focused in front of the retina because the eye is too long, and therefore by the time the image hits the retina, it's blurry. This is a little bit complicated. We're not going to get into this. The study of all this, of how light travels in these paths called rays, and how it gets focused and shifted and refracted by lenses, and where the image ends up being focused. It's called the study of optics. So I think it's really fascinating, but we still don't have time to get into the details. But you know that people who have vision problems can get glasses or contact lenses, and those lenses have special shapes to them, so that basically the lens that you wear when you're wearing glasses or contact lenses, they help to bend the light so that by the time the light does actually get to your retina, it is truly focused.